I'm not the kind of woman people forget, especially not my own parents. But there it was on social media, a sparkling photo from the Blake family mansion. My brother Preston stood between mom and dad, glasses raised, the caption glowing beneath the chandelier light, celebrating real success tonight. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I scrolled twice before I realized what I was looking at. A family party. Our family party. The one they forgot to invite me to. When I called, Mom answered on speaker, her voice sugar-coated with champagne. Oh, sweetheart, it's a small celebration. For accomplishments, you know?
Preston just got that investor deal signed.
You'll understand when you've got something big to celebrate too. Something big. Like the $8 million I'd saved their company last quarter through my restructuring plan. But apparently, financial wins only counted when a man's name was on the memo. I hung up without saying goodbye. The silence in my apartment pressed against me. The dishwasher hummed like a tired heart. My cat, Jasper, blinked from the counter as if asking why I was still standing there. Because humiliation burns slowly before it hardens into something sharp. I unlocked the cedar box under my bed, the one my late grandfather had left me. Inside lay the truth that my parents never liked to mention. I wasn't just their little analyst. I was a majority shareholder in Blake Harbor Logistics, thanks to Grandpa's trust. And unlike them, I didn't inherit the company to show off. I earned every title on those certificates. I pulled out the papers, my hand steady, my pulse not. Grandpa Milo had once told me, Rowan, power isn't about shouting. It's about knowing when silence will echo louder. That night, I decided to make silence thunder. I drove through Seattle's drizzle to an overnight notary. The rain streaked my windshield like silver threads, the kind you weave when you're sewing up old wounds. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered over the counter clerk in a Seahawks hoodie. She looked up when I laid the folder down. Transfer of ownership, I said. The clerk blinked. You sure about this? I smiled faintly. Completely. Next, I called our corporate attorney, Logan Pierce. He picked up with his usual gravelly calm. Rowan, it's late. Everything okay? I'm executing Grandpa's clause, I said. The one about reassignment of shares through Windbreak Holdings. Silence. Then a low whistle. Your parents are going to blow a gasket. Then I'll sell them earplugs. Within an hour, every legal line was signed and stamped. I transferred my shares into Windbreak Holdings, a new entity under my name alone, with partial dividends going to the Milo Blake Foundation, a scholarship fund for harbor workers' kids. That part made me smile. Grandpa would have loved that. By midnight, it was done. When I returned home, my phone was a wildfire. Calls, texts, voicemails piling in like debt collectors. Mom first. Then Dad. Then Preston, whose number I didn't even save but recognized from memory. 57 missed calls. Not one apology. Just panic. I set my phone on the counter, poured a cup of tea, and watched the steam rise. Somewhere in that mansion, the champagne glasses were probably still half full. I wondered when they'd notice what I'd done. They taught me that accomplishments were about appearances. I'd just taught them the cost of forgetting substance. At dawn, my phone buzzed again. Logan's message. Emergency board meeting, 9 a.m.
Perfect.
I put on my navy blazer, tied my hair into a braid, and slipped my tablet into my bag. By the time I reached Blake Harbor's headquarters, the rain had softened into mist. The marble lobby gleamed, its perfection cold enough to make me shiver. Morning, Miss Blake, said Earl, the security guard, lowering his voice. Your folks are upstairs already. Looks intense. I handed him a pink box. You might need these. He peeked inside. Donuts. His grin creased like folded paper. You're an angel. Not today, I said, stepping into the elevator. When the doors opened on the top floor, the temperature seemed to drop. My parents sat at the long glass table, looking like two statues built out of stress. Preston stood near the window, arms crossed, already rehearsing his smirk. Rowan, Mom started, her tone all false light. There seems to be a misunderstanding. I set the certified transfer documents in front of her. No misunderstanding. I exercised my rights under Grandpa's trust. My shares are now held by Windbreak Holdings. I retain full voting control. I also allocated a percentage toward the Scholarship Foundation. Dad's face flushed red. You moved half the company's leverage into your own shell corporation? No, I said calmly. I moved it out of reach of people who only celebrate their reflection. Preston laughed. You really think this stunt makes you powerful? You're emotional, not strategic. Across the table, Director Evelyn Hart adjusted her glasses. Let her finish, Preston. I met Evelyn's eyes. Sharp. Steady. The only one at that table who had once mentored me quietly when no one else did. This company's bleeding efficiency because we treat workers like background noise, I said. I'm proposing a 60-day operational audit. Evelyn and I will oversee it. And the board will approve it today. Mom stiffened. This is a family company, not a platform for your rebellion. Then maybe I should stop acting like a monarchy, I replied. Dad slammed his palm against the table. We can reverse this. You don't have the votes. Actually, Evelyn said, sliding her pen into place, she does. I just checked the updated registry. Her proxy holds controlling interest. The room froze. I looked at my parents. I didn't take your company. I took back my respect. Mom's voice cracked. You've humiliated us in front of everyone. I leaned forward. You excluded me from my own family. Consider this a learning experience. Dad glared. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said softly, but I'll never regret standing up. For a long moment, no one spoke. The city's fog pressed against the windows, and I realized how quiet power can feel when it finally belongs to you. As I walked out, I glanced back at them, the people who once told me to be grateful for crumbs. They'd finally learned what happens when you ignore the baker. Outside, Earl gave me a thumbs up. You good, Ms. Blake? I smiled for the first time that day. Better than good. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in years, so did the chapter where I waited to be invited. By noon, my phone looked like a slot machine on overdrive, notifications, calls, and frantic emails lighting up the screen. Reporters had caught wind of the internal shakeup at Blake Harbor Logistics, and the headlines were multiplying faster than damage control could manage. Family power shift rocks Blake empire. Heiress takes control. Parents caught off guard. I didn't answer a single message.
Not one.
At my apartment, sunlight slid through the blinds like quiet applause. I brewed coffee and opened my laptop. The company's stock was stable, actually rising slightly. Investors liked efficiency more than family drama. The market didn't care about my parents' wounded pride. It cared about results. Then the buzzer rang. Rowan, open this door. My mother's voice, sharp, trembling. I let the silence speak again, just as Grandpa once said. But after the third ring, I sighed and opened the door halfway. Mom stood there in designer heels, mascara streaked, hair undone, the same woman who once told me emotion was a weakness. Dad stood behind her, arms crossed, face like carved stone. Rowan, we need to talk, she said softly. You embarrassed us in front of the board, in front of the press. I cut her off. You embarrassed me my whole life. You just finally noticed the camera. Dad stepped forward. You can't just take what doesn't belong to you. Correction, I said, meeting his glare. It always belonged to me. You just pretended it didn't. He exhaled sharply. You're destroying your family over a party. I laughed once. It wasn't about the party. It was about respect. You built an empire on Grandpa's legacy, but you forgot his values. Honor, loyalty, fairness. I didn't. Mom's eyes filled. We can fix this, sweetheart. Please. No, I said. You can't fix what you refuse to see. Dad shook his head, muttering, We'll challenge this in court. Go ahead, I replied coolly. But when the filings hit the public record, every reporter will read Grandpa's trust clause, the one you both signed. The one that says if either of you act against my controlling decision, You forfeit all your shares to the foundation. Silence. Mom's lips parted, but no sound came out. That's why I never picked up your 57 calls, I said.
You didn't want to talk.
You wanted to control. Dad's jaw clenched. You think you've won? I looked past him, out toward the skyline, where the morning haze had turned gold.
No.
I think I've finally started. When they left, I didn't slam the door, I just closed it gently. Power didn't need volume anymore. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. Logan's text. Board approved your audit plan. Investors thrilled. You've got full control. I sank into the couch, tears threatening for the first time, not out of anger, but relief. Jasper jumped into my lap, purring like a victory drum. For years, I'd been the quiet daughter in the corner, the one who didn't fit the image. Now, I was the woman steering the entire ship. And tomorrow, the headlines wouldn't just be about revenge. They'd be about renewal. Because I wasn't done yet. I was going to rebuild Blake Harbor Logistics into something Grandpa would actually be proud of. And this time, the celebration wouldn't need invitations. It would be open to everyone who earned it. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing, not from family, but from CNN Business. They wanted to comment about my unexpected leadership transition. I almost laughed. Unexpected was one way to put it. I dressed sharply, white blouse, fitted blazer, black heels, and headed to the Blake Harbor headquarters. Cameras lined the street like vultures. Microphones flew toward me as I stepped from the car. Ms. Blake, is it true you've taken full control from your parents? Are you selling the company? Is this personal revenge? I stopped for a beat, the mist catching in my hair, and said clearly, no, this isn't revenge. This is responsibility. Then I walked through the lobby doors as the flashbulbs went wild. Inside, the energy was electric. Employees looked up from their desks as I passed, some curious, some nervous, some quietly smiling. These were the people who'd seen me working late nights, who'd brought me coffee when upper management forgot I existed. On the top floor, the conference room was already full. Reporters had been granted limited access, the board seated around a glossy mahogany table. Preston was there too, smirking like he owned the air.
He leaned back.
So, what's the plan, boss? I dropped my folder on the table. Change, I said. Real change. Evelyn nodded from the far end. You have the floor. I pulled up the first slide on the projector. For years, this company has been about image. High profits, higher egos. But we've forgotten the people who built it. The workers. The dock crews. The families behind every shipment. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the screen. I'm redirecting 5% of executive bonuses toward a new foundation, the Milo Fund, for employees' education and family support. Effective immediately. Preston scoffed. That's charity, not business. I turned toward him. No, that's leadership. Charity is giving what you can spare. Leadership is giving what you owe. Evelyn suppressed a grin. I vote yes. One by one, the hands went up around the table. Motion passed. I looked out through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Seattle glowed beneath a break in the clouds. We'll announce it publicly today. Every worker deserves to hear it from me directly. When I finished, the reporters swarmed again. Rowan, how do your parents feel about this? One asked. I smiled slightly. I'm sure they're watching closely. By afternoon, the announcement went viral. Eris turns empire into worker-focused legacy, trended on every platform. My inbox filled with messages, not from corporate elites, but from employees. Notes that simply said, thank you, or finally. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the harbor, I stood by the window of my new office. The same view my father once called the throne seat. I whispered to myself, not a throne anymore, just a start. The door clicked open. Evelyn stepped in, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. Thought you might want to toast your first real victory, she said. I took one. You've been in this business long enough. Does this ever get easier? She chuckled.
No.
But it gets clearer. You're not your parents, Rowan. You're the reset this place needed. I looked at the reflection in the glass, no longer the ignored daughter, but the woman who finally chose herself. I raised my glass toward the skyline. To Grandpa Milo, I said softly. Evelyn clinked hers against mine. To doing things differently. Outside, the city lights shimmered like applause. And for the first time, I felt not victorious, but free. A week later, the company's lobby looked nothing like it used to. Gone were the cold marble displays and towering portraits of my father shaking hands with billionaires. In their place stood a digital wall filled with photos of employees and their families, smiling beside cargo ships and forklifts. The plaque above it read, "The Real Blake Harbor Team." When I walked in, people actually clapped. Not out of fear, out of respect. It was surreal. For years I had passed through this building invisible, just another quiet analyst with a family name no one took seriously. Now, the same faces were stopping me in the hallways with genuine smiles. "Ms. Blake," said Sarah from accounting, "my son got the first scholarship from the Milo Fund. He's going to college next fall." I felt a lump rise in my throat. "That's what this was always meant for," I told her. "Tell him to make us proud." That moment was worth every sleepless night, every fight, every tear I'd held back. As the elevator doors opened to the top floor, the air carried the faint scent of cedar and fresh paint. My new office was still being furnished, but the view remained the same, the harbor stretching out like a promise. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello." "Rowan," my father's voice said, softer than I'd ever heard it. "Your mother's here too." I stayed quiet.
He sighed.
"We saw the interviews. The foundation. You turned a company around in a week. We wanted to say we were wrong. You deserved that seat all along." For a moment, I didn't trust myself to speak. Then I said, "It wasn't about the seat, Dad. It was about being seen." Mom's voice came next, trembling. "We should have celebrated you that night. You've done something incredible. We're proud of you, sweetheart." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was something. "Thank you," I said softly. "And don't worry, I didn't build this to take it away. I built it so the next generation never feels forgotten." Mom sniffed quietly. "Could we maybe come by the office? For dinner? As a family this time?" A small laugh escaped me. "Only if Preston leaves the bragging at home." They both chuckled. It felt strange, light, real, almost human. When the call ended, I stood by the window, the city humming below. I could almost hear Grandpa's voice again. "Silence echoes louder, Rowan." He was right. I hadn't needed to scream, beg, or break down. I'd simply stood my ground, and that had been enough. That evening, the company hosted an event, not for executives, but for the workers. Food trucks lined the parking lot, kids ran between tables, music echoed through the crisp Seattle air. For the first time, Blake Harbor felt alive. Evelyn raised a glass and called out, to the woman who turned a cold empire into a family again, "Rowan Blake." The crowd cheered. I laughed, cheeks burning, but my heart was full. I took the mic and said, "My grandfather built this company with his hands. My parents built it with ambition. But you, all of you, keep it running every single day. From now on, the harbor belongs to everyone who helps it stay afloat." The applause that followed wasn't loud, it was thunder. Under the golden evening lights, I saw my parents in the crowd. Mom smiled through tears. Dad gave a small nod. And for once, I smiled back without resentment. Because revenge wasn't the end, it was the beginning of respect. And that night, under the same stars my grandfather once worked beneath, I finally felt home.